Many university or researchers often ask me about a research gap or the statement of problems, means problem statement, and how to identify it. So there's many questions about how I identify the problem, how I identify the problem statement, and how do I define the research gap. And this is very important and super important, because there's no problem if you don't have a research gap. Then you basically don't have any aim of your paper, and this means you don't really have a thesis or a paper. So identify the research gap or the problems is vital. That is why in this video I want to share with you my 3 top tips to very quickly identify the research gap, from which then you can have the aim of your study and the rest of your thesis. My name is Qasim Muhammad Khurshid Hamad, and I am a PhD researcher in University of Technology Malaysia UTM, where I help university students and researchers write better thesis and paper. So the first tip that I want to share with you to help you identify the research gap is to look for a lack of studies or for insufficient studies. Now it is very unlikely that no studies have been conducted on some things. It may be the case, but it is rather unlikely. But what's likely is that there is not enough studies. In other words, there is an insufficient number of studies on a particular topic, or perhaps in a particular area. So in here, when it comes to the lack of study, you can consider several gap in knowledge. For example, it can be geographical gap. Maybe no studies on this subject that have been conducted, like in Canada or Asia or a particular regions of your country. So you could also think about the population gap. Maybe most people have studies men, and very few people have studied this topic on women, or in children, or in high-income people, or in low-income people. So in educated people, and so on. So this is just to give you a couple of examples how you can look for a lack or insufficient research in order to identify the research gap. Tip number 2 would be to look for not a lack of study, but a lack of understanding, or a lack of knowledge, or some kind of controversy in your field. Now it very often appears that if several studies have already been conducted on a particular issue, they may have had different results, and this means that we are not sure yet how we should understand this problem. There may also be conflicting theories, or 3 may be different explanations of the particular phenomenon. In other words, researchers disagree, for example, as to the cause of something or the effect of something, or there are different ways of approaching a particular problem. This would be another way in which you can identify the research gap or the problem that will then lead you the aim of your study. Now the last and third tip that I want to talk about is to look for problem in previous study, to look for limitations of previous research, or to look for anything or things that other researchers have not done percentage completely, or things that could be improved about their studies. And this can also give you your research gap or the statement of a problem. So for example, think about it like this. Perhaps most researchers have used a particular way of analyzing the data, but they ignored other ways in which the data could be analyzed, so which potentially could have given different results. Now to sum up the 3 ways in which you can identify the research gap and state the problems which you're going to answer your research aim. First of all, to look for a lack of research or insufficient research. Number 2, look for lack of understanding or a controversy in your field. And number 3 is to look for limitations, previous studies or problems with the previous studies. If possible, you should have more than one problem, more than one research gap that you are going to identify, usually especially if you are doing a PhD. It won't be enough just to have one, just to say insufficient studies have been conducted and that is it. As a result, I am going to do another study. That is not enough. Possible as well have different type of research gap. So maybe have one about insufficient studies and another one may be about the lack of understanding or a problem with the previous study. This will help make the reasons for your study, this problem or research gap, much more robust and stronger, and as a result the aim of your study will be much more logical as well. Thank you very much for your time. I hope it was interested for you. With best regard.